think now we're able to do so much more that I kind of think about it that I'm only limited by my creativity. If you think about like a company's revenue as a bucket, you can kind of see that in most companies there's probably a few holes in the bucket, and those holes are, leaking customers, the customers that are cancelling for various reasons. And then you have a tap at the top of the bucket. That's your sales team flowing in, hopefully lots of revenue.
Yes.
And I kind of see my job as how can I either bring data to decisions, to patch those holes, or systems that can patch those holes, to keep the customers in. How can I turn the tap on further? How can I make our sales team more efficient? And then are there any new taps that I can turn on? How can I find new ways that we can create revenue streams alongside our sales team to hopefully, grow wealth in the business?
So Toby, thanks for joining us on Creative Expression today. Excited to have you here and sort of learn a little bit more about the interesting and dynamic career path that you've chosen to take in the revenue ops space, sort of working in the SaaS field, software as a service tech space. And reason I'm really excited about this conversation is obviously we've met a few times at technology events and we ran into each other, but your pathway I think is going to be really interesting for likes of school leavers, for example, who might be trying to find their future, whether they're going down maybe a traditional route through a university pathway, or it might be going down a trade, or it might be looking at maybe a less kind of normal channel to find where they're going to work. And this could be a really good story for that as well. And I think the other interesting angle is that technology and AI is moving so fast and it's changing the way we work and the future of work. Anyone who's in the workspace, myself, anyone from their 20s through to their 60s, etc., are going to be interested about the future of their jobs as technology is changing. And it's not a matter of if but when things will change. And I'm kind of getting the theme quite a bit now that it's not that AI will replace our jobs as such, but it could be that someone who understands AI or understands technology will replace our jobs. And so for me, it kind of means that we can't be complacent in the work we're doing. We've got to be looking at what's trending and what the future looks like and sort of moving with it as well. And I think in the next 2 to 3 years, it's going to be so much disruption. It's a different way of thinking, right? So
totally.
So I'm sort of just looking forward to that, just sort of like going wherever we take this conversation today. But because I'm sort of like also focused on, the school leavers, I'm curious a little bit more about you and Toby Sharp as a young fella. What was life like for you? Where did you grow up? What was the family dynamics? And what were some of the things that you did to either get yourself into trouble or keep yourself out of trouble as a kid? What was life like growing up for you, Toby?
Yeah, totally. Stoked to be here. I mean, I think it's a great conversation and I'm really excited to dive into it. So, I'm Toby Sharp, obviously. Have fallen into the Rev Ops space, but that earlier part in life, had a great family. We grew up out in Kaukopakapa, which for me was the perfect upbringing, I think. Being out in the bush, in nature, spent years doing things like scouts where the parents would drop us off and would end up coming a few days later, come home after building a little shelter in a bush and, keeping ourselves entertained. So I think a lot of my younger years, it was things like that and sport, playing rugby, doing mountain biking, very active child, and always something on the go for sure.
Yeah, great. So sort of like in the country, in nature, quite physical, and things like scouts are quite interesting because they're always challenging you and they're teaching you life skills and things like that. Was there ever a time that you were like in a position where you were like freaking out or nervous or like really challenged your fear in that space?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it was an incredible way to grow up doing scouts for me. I know not everyone shares the same experience, but we had a really good group, and I can see that built a lot of foundational concepts in my life, through their leadership training, their giving back to community, their looking after the environment. But when I think back to that, like, it's not really nerves that I think of, because I think they gave you such confidence that, like, you could do whatever you wanted. So for me, it was never a space of being nervous or worried. I mean, maybe when we were really younger, but having that homesick sort of feeling. But by the time we were into it, it was, we couldn't wait to get away, and then we could happily be gone for ages without speaking to anyone. It was just out doing our thing.
It's like giving yourself permission to believe in yourself and trust in your environment. And so if I put you in the bush with a compass, you're pretty confident getting your way out.
Yeah, I'd be all right. I'd probably have quite a good time doing it. And I think as well, even if I did fail or have an error, it was, building skill sets so that you were able to have confidence that when you were in a sticky situation, you could get yourself out.
Yes, yeah. Okay, so you can survive in the bush for a period of time.
I'd like to think so. The skills are probably a little bit rusty these days, but yeah, I'd like to back myself in that opportunity.
Yeah, nice. What a beautiful upbringing, and sort of moving then through to like sort of school, right? And I'm sort of thinking around year 11, 12, 13. It's a period of time for kids to really be thinking about their futures, and laying the foundations at school. And I'm curious about how you found school. Were there sort of subjects that you kind of navigated towards, and are there challenges that you experienced at school? How did you find school generally for you in preparation for life?
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely for me areas that were strengths and some that were weaknesses. I'm a dyslexic, and I think when I was younger, that was probably something that hindered certain parts. My English was always terrible. I remember we had exchange students who didn't speak a lot of English, and they were spelling English at a higher level than me, and I was like, oh, that's really bad. But I don't see that as a hindrance anymore. And I think throughout those later parts of school, it was that sort of realization that yes, that may mean that I struggle with certain things, but my strengths were really strong, and it allows me to think and to solve problems in a really creative way that I think has led to a lot of my successes. But yeah, in those later years, it was physical education, outdoor eds, a little bit of the sciences in there as well. But I think when I was in that sort of age, I wasn't entirely sure what I wanted to do. I loved being outdoors, and so I considered doing outdoor education and leading that. I had a massive passion for coffee.
Yes.
I got into baristaing through a mentor of mine, and he taught me a lot of skills, more than just coffee, but that really ignited that passion. And then I was lucky enough to go on and work for some amazing places and get really good at that. And then the idea of business really interested me. I think a lot of my family has been, either run their own businesses or, been in management positions and solving interesting problems. And so that always made sense to me and was always sort of a strength of mine. So playing to my strengths, that was something I was also looking into. So and then ended up heading off to Massey University for a degree in business.
Fantastic. You enjoyed that because you had a bit of an entrepreneurial sort of mindset by the sounds of it. So that would have been an ideal pathway for you to follow.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And my major was entrepreneurship and innovation. So,
there you go.
I think finding unique ways to solve problems has always been something that's interested me, and figuring out ways that you can solve things that maybe no one has before.
Yeah, great. And so you've got these sort of layers of scouts, outdoor adventure, problem solving. You've got creativity coming through, dyslexia, problem solving, and kind of finding your way through things which are not necessarily set up for dyslexia through the school system. And then you're following this entrepreneurial business path. When you come out of studies and business studies, where were you at then? Had you sort of identified Rev Ops, or were you still unsure about your pathway at that point?
Yeah, I guess when I was in my last year of university, I'd been working for a well-renowned coffee roastery in Auckland. And actually throughout that last year, I was gonna start up my own cafe. It ended up falling through because a landlord changed some terms last minute. This was around COVID times, and so it basically made it either very risky or not feasible, and so decided I'd pull pin, and that wasn't the right spot then, but I'd keep finishing off my degree, keep working where I was, and then as I was finishing, I kind of saw two pathways in front of me. I could either open up a coffee roastery, which I had all these business plans that I had drawn up throughout my degree. I still think I'd do a great job at it, and I've got a really good business model that's unique to New Zealand. Or I could go into sales. And that was something I had just picked up through when I had been doing university and also working in coffee roasteries, doing things like selling equipment. Was actually that was something I thought I was good at, and I thought I could be good at doing further. And so I kind of saw those two paths, and I was probably leaning towards starting a coffee roastery, to be honest. But got shoulder tapped by someone to go for an interview at Comply Pro, and that was Michael, our CEO. And he said, just go for an interview. And to be honest, I was quite hesitant at the time because I had this passion. And I was like, oh, well, I'll check it all out, see what this company's all about and what they do. And they actually sold into the food industry and hospitality industry through a product called Safe Food Pro. And for me, that was then, I was like, I understand that. I get the problem they're solving, and actually it's a really good idea. And then the whole world of SaaS sort of opened up. And despite doing a 3-year degree in business, like SaaS was still a new concept to me, and probably something I had never really heard of or thought about as a model.
For our audience, could you explain what SaaS stands for and sort of what SaaS means?
Yeah, totally. So SaaS is software as a service. Effectively, if you thought about things like your Netflix subscription, it's something that they bill every month or every year, depending on your contract term, and it's reoccurring revenue. And those types of businesses have some strategic advantages to them because of that predictability of the revenue that's going to come in tomorrow and then a year's time, and you can model the data quite well. You know how much you're going to lose, you know how much you're going to gain, and therefore there's some good exits for those types of businesses as well. You get quite a good multiple on your revenue. Yeah,
thanks. And so you're getting an interview into Comply Pro. And before we move down that pathway, because I'm really interested in that, how do you sort of maintain your interest around coffee and that side of your life just now? Because I'm curious, because it seems like a real passion for you too.
Totally. I think it's still something I'm really passionate about. I love all things coffee. I think so many people probably never get to experience what that can be. I would argue that most of the coffee that people drink is terrible, and I probably wouldn't drink myself. Maybe that's a bit snobbish, but that's okay. But there's a whole world of flavor out there that can be incredible. And yeah, just the refinements, the detail in perfecting a recipe for a coffee was what I really enjoyed. So I still do that. It's just on a much smaller scale at home by myself and with some good friends, and exploring the detail in just smaller batches.
Perfect. I'm looking forward to coming over for coffee.
Yeah.
It sounds life-changing, right?
It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
So Comply Pro, so you've got an interview lined up and you're exploring what the organization's about, and it's aligned to the food sector. Tell me a little bit about the interview and sort of what kind of interested you and got you over the line to start working at Comply Pro, and maybe a little bit about Comply Pro as an organization.
Yeah, totally. So I was, as I said, finishing up my last year. I was doing 5 papers at the time, so it was quite a hectic course load because I had actually gone part-time the year before to work more, and then I was just catching back up. So managed to still finish within the same time frame, but had also done a whole bunch of extra work, which was something I was passionate about.
A lot of coffee then.
A lot of coffee,
Yeah.
a lot of coffee. But it was good. It was something that when I saw that, I was like, I'm not going to go into this interview sort of half prepared. If I'm going to go into it, I'm going to get the job. So for me, that meant looking into the company, figuring out what the process would be, and I knew that I was going in for a sales role. I'd have to sell the software to Ryan, the sales manager at the time. And for me, hard work has always been throughout my life. I've always had lots of things that I was doing, and working really hard is a sort of core value of mine. And so I went through all of their publicly available information. They gave me a sandbox to spin up, and after my studies for my exams, every night I would do a few hours of just watching every single support video, reading every article so that I knew every part of the software. And then when it meant it was time to come pitch, I felt like I had a really good understanding of what that was. I looked through things like how do they phrase on the website, how they sell, and at the time thought I had figured some stuff out that was intentional. Turns out it wasn't, but that's okay. And did a pitch, ended up getting through, and then started off as a inbound sales rep.
Yeah, okay. Well, hats off to you on your dedication to getting the job, right? Because I think there's a really good story just in there for anyone who's actually really serious about a new job. The amount of work that you put into researching that organization must have given you that confidence and commitment to it, and they would have definitely seen that.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And I think for me that would be a must if I was going to do something like that. For people who are looking for that job. Now I've been on the other end of that, hiring, and I think it's quite interesting at the moment when there are the likes of LLMs, and you can quite clearly see who's just used an LLM to write a cover letter, or their CV even, and it makes quite a clear distinction.
Being a large language model, ChatGPT.
Yeah, ChatGPT, Gemini.
Yes.
And not that that's a bad thing, but it's who used it well and what else did they do. If they've just got something very generic that's not really specific to Comply Pro at all, or to me, or to the role, it's like, I'll put that one in the other pile.
Yes, yeah. And so we're still in a way on your journey to Rev Ops, because now you've moved into a sales role.
Yep.
And so you've found yourself a position in a software as a service, subscription-based organization in the tech sector. You're moving into sales, and this is sort of still on your pathway to finding Rev Ops, I guess, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So in the sales process in a tech organization, what's that like? What were you doing? Your hands were dirty, long hours? What sort of work is that?
Yeah, totally. We at the time were very focused on a model put out and published predominantly by HubSpot, and that they refer to as the flywheel. And it is a different way of thinking about sales. It's about the whole experience, so that when you're selling, it's not just about the sales process, but it's also about everything that happens before and everything that happens after, and it should create this nice lovely loop that means you grow, then people refer you, and that comes back and restarts the funnel. And that was creating a really efficient inbound engine. So it was about A/B testing. It was about refining those small details, because that could then mean that on the other end of that model, it was a massive impact. We were a predominantly inbound company, so inbound meaning things like Google ads, Meta ads. People would see an ad for us, click through into their details, and then they would come in and talk to someone like myself.
Yes.
However, I ended up kind of enjoying the outbound selling motion a little bit more. As part of my ramp time, we had to do some cold outbound. And that meant, at the time, it was Googling construction businesses or food businesses. And, I went through everything. It was literally using the yellow pages. I was using Neighborly. I was looking at people's Facebook, their websites. If you had public information available, I had probably tried to find it and used it. And I loved that, because then it was so much more up to me, and I could A/B test messaging. I could, if I needed more leads that month, I could call more. And to the point of that hard work piece, it was like I was in control of the outcome.
Yes.
You could model, if I put this many people at the top of the funnel, I'm going to lose approximately this much before this stage, and then model that all the way down to close one revenue, they've signed the contract, and then I could take my target and go, okay, if I need to sell this much, this is how much work I can do, and I can control these numbers. I can do more or less of that based on how things are flowing through.
So you're bringing a lot of analytics into your sales process. You're not just sort of going hard out into sales with no strategy. You're putting the data behind the process. And
totally.
When you talk about A/B testing, talk to me about what is A/B testing and some examples that you might have used in those early days of sales to go, I'm going to test this A versus this B, and what sort of results, how did that work for you with your testing?
Yeah, I tested a lot. I mean, I think different things like a subject line in an email, you have very few words to actually capture someone's attention. With the rise of things like Apple Watches now, you can see people look at an email and dismiss it on their watch. And if you look at that, you think, how many words are on that screen? It is very little. So that's how many words you have to capture someone's attention. So at the time, it was focusing on things like that. How could I change the subject line, the first wording? How could I change the call to action? How it was laid out so it was easier to read? Length of emails, testing small ones, big ones. But then it was also things like having fun with it and getting creative. I handwrote letters and I would send them. I went down to the shop, bought a stack of stamps and sent handwritten letters to people. And you'd call them, and some people may not have got the letter, but then even just that phone call of saying, I sent you a letter, did you get it? And they're like, you mean an email? And you're like, no, I sent you a letter.
Physical letter in the mail. Did you check your letterbox?
And people loved it.
Yes.
Like, people would take a meeting with me just because they were like, no one's done this in years.
This is not typed and printed, this is handwritten?
Handwritten.
Yes.
Because you can tell the difference between a printed. I do actually think I've found a way that I can do that where you couldn't tell. Still yet to be tested, but I'll let you know how that goes once I've done it. But yeah, it was handwritten by me, probably a couple of spelling mistakes. I used to sit down for like a 2-hour block and just write consistently, and again changing the messaging. Put my phone number on the bottom, give me a call.
So this is where the A/B testing of different systems came in. And working out what worked, what didn't, by just being hands-on, getting kind of your hands dirty
Yeah.
into the game and learning, from the ground up, eh?
Yeah, I mean, you've got to get in the weeds. I mean, I think, things like being on the phone. You've got to have no fear of rejection. Comply Pro has an amazing culture where if you're doing an outbound phone call, which is a really hard job.
I agree.
You are getting told, bluntly by construction workers, they would tell us to fuck off.
Yes.
And you're like, this is, my first call of the morning, and that's the response I'm getting.
Another coffee.
It's pretty rough. But we had a really good team culture, and the response was, no, they don't get to do that. They can be not interested, and that's cool. We have no problem with that. We want to sell to people who are interested in us.
Yes.
We're not sleazy car salespeople or those typical things that people think about when thinking of sales reps. It's like we solve a problem and we deliver value. It's about finding the people that have those pain points and showing them a solution that we can offer.
Yes.
But in those times where you did get quite a rude response, we would call them back.
Yes.
And it was instantly, everyone would yell it out, call them back. And you'd pick up the phone again and you'd dial them back and you say, hey, it seems we got disconnected. We're just talking about this. And often the response was quite good because it's like being online. People think they can get away with whatever they want because they're behind a screen. But that confrontation of like, hey, I'm a human. I'm just here, trying to talk to you about a potential pain point. Like if it's not a good time, we can talk later.
Yes.
I think people were quite surprised by that, and often it actually led to conversation, and that was still often that they weren't interested, but then you could end the conversation in a good manner, and
that's great. I think there's nothing like cold calling for building your confidence, and just learning to communicate with people on the phone is such a valuable thing for anybody. So I'd recommend anyone bound to get in any kind of job where it's outbound calling and learn how to do that.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's no matter what you do in life for a job, there's always going to be an element of selling somewhere in that business. So I think the more you can learn how that works, how to sell people effectively, and also how to sell yourself.
Yes. Yeah. And so now we're sort of moving in, you're doing sales, you're testing systems, you're experimenting with different channels, and we're kind of, I guess, moving in naturally to Rev Ops, even though you may not have even known what Rev Ops was at that time, or you didn't have the title. For our audience, can you explain to me, what is Rev Ops? What does it mean? How does it fit in? What's its scope within an organization?
Yeah, totally. It's a new title or a new job function. It's probably not been around too long, and certainly in New Zealand it's still young. There's a lot more of us out there now, so hopefully soon when I tell people what I do, they'll actually know what that is. But for now, it's still that blank face. So Rev Ops is effectively you can kind of think about it as like the network in between different parts of the company. So, typically it spans across the go-to-market function. So your sales team, your customer success and support, potentially finance, depending what organization you work with, and the marketing function as well. For us, that's sort of where it lives, and it's creating systems and processes to create better cross-team functions. So things like making sure that if someone has data in our customer success team, it's reflecting the same thing as our sales team, and the same thing for the marketing, so that you can have a unified approach of how you talk and interact with your customers, and then off the back of that as well, all of your reporting, analytics, bringing data to decisions, and creating more efficiency throughout the organization.
Yes.
it's things like how can we get our sales team selling more and doing less of the administrative part of their job.
Gotcha,
If we can get them on the phone earning more money, that's better for everyone involved because that's what they actually enjoy, but also it means that we're not paying them to do administrative tasks.
Yes, gotcha. We caught up for a pizza and a beer recently, and you spoke about the analogy of a bucket. And tell us about that, because I thought that was an interesting analogy as well.
Yeah, totally. If you think about like a company's revenue as a bucket, you can kind of see that in most companies there's probably a few holes in the bucket, and those holes are leaking customers. They're customers that are cancelling for various reasons. And then you have a tap at the top of the bucket. That's your sales team flowing in hopefully lots of revenue.
Yes.
And I kind of see my job as how can I either bring data to decisions, to patch those holes, or systems that can patch those holes to keep the customers in. How can I turn the tap on further? How can I make our sales team more efficient? And then are there any new taps that I can turn on? How can I find new ways that we can create revenue streams alongside our sales team to hopefully grow wealth in the business?
Gotcha, yeah. So it's keeping the bucket full with as much water as possible and keeping it in there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. And earlier we were talking about the model in the tech space, which I think is really exciting, and it creates so much opportunity for entrepreneurs who have tech companies, but also for employees in tech companies, because often you get to have a share within the business as well. And the model that we're talking about under subscription as a service, organizations are valued differently in the tech space to a traditional business based on equity. And then there's some levers that also influence the value of an organization. So a new dollar of revenue might be leveraged into a multiple of that. Could you talk about some of the things that affect the value of a tech company? Because to me, one of the big values of Rev Ops is the multiplier impact that you bring into an organization. And I think for people listening to today's podcast and people considering coming into this channel, this is a real key part about the value of this role for tech companies, and why people like yourself are going to be getting tapped, and there's going to be huge heavy demand. So I'm curious about some of those levers that you operate, you leverage, and even some examples of how you've done that.
I think a few points there. One of them being around like ESOP. It is again something that I had never really thought about as someone leaving school or leaving university even, but is pretty commonplace in a lot of SaaS companies. And that's effectively the company's way of saying, you're coming along for this journey, especially if it's a startup and they are earlier in the journey and you're taking a bit of a risk on, maybe the company will go under and you won't have a job anymore.
Yes.
Or maybe you will be not paid what a massive company would pay, but there's opportunity in other areas like the ESOP and title growth and, opportunities to say yes to stuff. I think that's where your ESOP comes in a lot, in the sense that they're giving you a little slice of the pie. They're saying, hey, if you stick around, we'll give you a little slice of the company. And most SaaS companies, their goal is to exit. So you build a company to sell it, whether that be listing on a stock exchange or selling to another company who would buy you and acquire the business.
Gotcha. What does ESOP stand for?
Employee Share Ownership Program. So effectively it's just giving you shares in the company. Every company will have shares and they're registered on, like in New Zealand, on the business registry. You can go in and search up any company and see how many shares are there and who owns those shares as well. Why that's so valuable, I think, is in SaaS, it's quite a unique way of valuing a business. So effectively, you get paid on a multiple of revenue, which is quite different to most businesses. So we measure our success in basically what's MRR or ARR, which is monthly reoccurring revenue or annual reoccurring revenue. So that's how many dollars of subscriptions do you have at any given time. So if you thought about Netflix, you'd say they might have 100 people and they're all paying $10. And that $10 times their annual contract at 12 months would be their ARR for one person, and then they count it up for everyone. So it can quite quickly add up. You know, you think about, you sell one person once, and then they're going to buy from you again and again and again, effectively, hopefully in perpetuity. But we know that that's not typically the case, and we can model, you know, how long we think they'll actually stay with us. For a typical customer, we can cohort that based on size, industry, things like that, to get a really accurate view of who that will be. In SaaS at the moment, you know, most markets are paying sort of 5 to 6x your revenue. So if you had $1 million of ARR, you would get 5 to 6 times that as a company valuation.
So if you introduced an initiative that added an extra 100,000 of revenue for the organization, the entrepreneurs, the employees, that's 6x. Yep. $600,000 worth of value that comes into the business. So holding on to your clients for longer and, you know, increasing, maybe upselling and things like that is all part of the revenue ops strategy, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And it's all those small wins, but also, providing insight to other teams as well. You know, I can't claim all the credit by any means. We have amazing teams in the sales space, and, you know, it's how can I enable our sales managers and our customer success leaders, how can I give them the data so that they can make the best decisions about, you know, where things are going in the space. So it is really a team game. I'm just, you know, one of the team.
Yeah, got you. And, you know, to me, there seems to be so many products, you know, as a business owner or an executive working in an organization, that you can choose to use to run your business. And so one of the biggest challenges I find is that you can have too many products in your business, and then your skill set has to be quite thin across all those products. How do you evaluate what are good products to run your own business? And how, you know, is it important that they interconnect, and what do you see maybe are the trends in products into the future within your business?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I almost see tools as like a cyclical market. You know, they swing from people buy heaps of tools and they're very specific solutions that can do something really well. So you might have a phone dialer that is amazing at just phone calls, and that's all it does. It brings up the perfect information for the rep, and, you know, there's phone dialers that could call multiple people at the same time, just connect you with the person that picks up, and people will have lots of those tools. But then it swings the other way, and probably pretty in line with markets when there's capital available, when there's budget constraints. And that swings to more of a consolidation play. I think at the moment it's quite interesting because it's consolidating, but potentially in a slightly different way to the past. I mean, I think you can look at, there's companies like SalesLoft and Cleary, who are massive companies that haven't been able to exit because capital's tied up in venture capital funds, because public markets have been not exiting as much. And so you have companies like that merging, typically at the moment, to try and bring some sort of data into a company to enable an AI, or they're purchasing an AI platform to then enable their platform with AI. But there's also a lot of people building stuff. And I think we're entering a time where, you know, even Rev Ops teams, which historically have done, you know, a lot more building systems and building on systems than the normal but I think now we're able to do so much more that I kind of think about it that I'm only limited by my creativity. And so instead of buying a solution, now if I can build it for often quite cheaper and potentially more specific to how I want it, like that's becoming a lot more common and a lot easier to do. Is it necessarily scalable? Maybe not. That's something we'll find out. But I think it's a hell of a lot of fun, and also I think we'll fix those problems as we go, and it's going to end up with a lot better solution. So
you're using technology to plug the gaps, which may have previously cost quite a lot of money, but technology is enabling us to build little tools to do some of these cool things in our businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, when I look at our tech stack, like you mentioned, do they have to connect? Like that's a core for us. It's like everything has to connect, because you need a source of truth. You need to be able to have, you know, the same story being told from every part of the business. And that sounds really easy, but it's actually really complicated.
It's a single source of data across the whole organization, so that all the systems are feeding into a single data set, or feeding off a single data set, I guess.
Yeah.
Yes. Totally.
And you know, it's not something we have perfect yet, but you know, we are always getting a lot closer and closer. And I think, it's something that when I'm adding a tool, like that is definitely in the back of my mind. Does it connect? How well does it connect? A lot of things connect, but very poorly.
Yes.
So for me, that's a really important decision. But then also, making sure it solves the core problems, that we're not causing tech bloat, that we've got multiple things doing the exact same thing in different places, and having a unified strategy.
Yes. And so how many years have you been working with ComplyPro now?
I've just passed over 4 years with them.
4 years. And so the conversation we're having here is really interesting, and it's deep and it's layered, and I can see in 4 years starting off in a sales job and moving to this type of conversation about the complexities and integrations. And someone from the outside looking in might go, wow, that's a huge amount of tech experience and skill. But you've developed that from day one through being curious, I guess, and experimenting. And I'd be nervous. I'd be going, wow, that's a lot of experience you have. But you've acquired it through certain inquiry, I think. Should people be worried about getting to this level, or can they move through it with the right attitude?
Yeah, no, I think it's all about that curiosity. I think if you want to, you can take advantage of all of these tools and concepts very easily, or maybe not very easily, but with the right amount of work, anybody could do it. When we were looking to hire for our first person to join our Rev Ops team, we looked at who do we want to hire, or what type of person. And it's like, for me, it's all about problem solving. How creative can you be, and like, what do you do when you get stuck? Like, we set a test for those employees that would intentionally, like, I knew they would hit roadblocks, and we got them to document what they did and how they overcame that. And some people just said, I got stuck, couldn't do it, like, did you not know you couldn't do this? Which is okay. But what I found fascinating was the people that said, I got stuck, I couldn't do this, I tried this problem, couldn't do that, so I tried this, couldn't do that, and found a way.
Yes.
They iterated to a solution, which I really liked. And all of that was just around that curiosity piece. It was like having the courage to ask the question, and maybe the solution didn't work, and try again.
Yes.
And to keep doing that until you figure it out. So yes. I think a lot of it you can learn through doing, But there's also amazing resources out there. You know, I'm a huge podcast listener. I listen to ungodly amounts of business podcasts, and you know, I think there's a lot of value out there, especially in the SaaS Rev Ops space. Like, it's moving so fast that like it's changing every week. So I think, you know, some of the more traditional ways of learning might not have that, and so I think you can have a really good balance of, you know, I still think my degree was great and good, and glad I've done it, but I think, you know, you can get a lot out of non-traditional education as well.
Yeah, great. And are there, in, like, say Rev Ops as an example, are there any channels or organizations that people could sort of move towards to identify the kind of podcasts and information or starting places that they would move down this career?
Yeah, totally. I think, you know, there's a lot of good podcasts. I think a lot of what makes a good RevOps operator as well is understanding context and why you would make decisions. So for me, I listen to a lot of business podcasts that are probably a little bit more generic than a RevOps role. Because I think it informs better strategy and better decision making. So for me, that's a lot of SaaS podcasts, and then, you know, being part of communities, meeting up with people, talking to other companies. How do you solve this problem? Learning from our peers is really important. So I think, you know, building that network while you're young, especially, is really important. LinkedIn's huge. I know a lot of young people hate it, but get in there, find someone that you find interesting. Like, start reading their stuff, find thought leaders, and start listening to what they have to say, or ask them questions. A lot of them will respond to you. But then in terms of things like AI, obviously that's a huge proponent of my job these days, and having to keep up with that. A lot of it, again, is in very non-traditional spaces. You know, it's on Twitter or X. It's on, you know, again, podcasts, YouTube. Andre Karpathy, one of the founders of OpenAI, has some incredible YouTube videos, and I've recommended them to a lot of people, and most of them won't watch them because they're 3 hours each, which is a lot of content. I can appreciate that, but like, if you truly want to understand how AI works, and how an LLM functions, like, go watch those videos. I mean, flick me a message, I'll send you them. They are amazing, and that changes how you use them, and get a lot better results, I think, out of it.
Yeah, definitely. And looping back to where I started off today around, you know, those of us who are in work and maybe concerned about the future of our jobs and the relevance of the work we're doing, and being replaced potentially with technology and AI. What's your recommendation for, you know, just not just SaaS, but all people in business, everyone who's working, all executives? What should we be doing within our work now?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question, and one that's really hard to answer. I think if you look at the best experts in the space, you know, most of them say that they don't know, which makes it really hard, because then you go, well, what the heck's coming? There's multiple different paths it could take, and I certainly don't claim to know which one it will be. But for me, where I think about, well, what can I do in that space of the unknown? It's like, firstly, get clued up, like, watch the 3-hour videos, understand how these things work, use them. Like, even before I watched things like those videos and other resources, I was using them and testing, like, what worked, what didn't, what worked for me, when it didn't work, why, and then iterating on that, and you can find ways that you can add value.
These like free resources?
Some of them can be, some of them are paid. Most businesses will probably have a Google Workspace subscription, and you get most of that, most of their AI for free in that subscription. Well, not for free, you pay for it, but in that subscription you get a lot of it. You still can get a lot publicly for free. I will say though that a lot of public tools, if you're not paying for the product, you are the product.
Yes.
So just to be wary of that. There's great resources on, how to use AI responsibly that people can check out. But yeah, I think getting clued up is definitely step one. Testing it, step two.
Yes.
And I think just being curious. Think about how you run things, just because something's been done one way forever and maybe no one uses AI in your industry. I was having a conversation with a coffee roaster, funnily enough, at a SaaS event. It was put on by a data company called Firmable, who sell ANZ firmographic data, and they were looking into it, and they said, how do I do this? Like, I know how to roast coffee, but I have no idea about how to do sales. And I was just sitting there thinking, oh my God, I'd love to come and just like build some stuff for you, because nobody's doing so much of what we think is the absolutes, the must-dos, the must-haves in SaaS.
Because you're right in it.
Because we're right in the weeds, and we have to keep up with the frontier, because if you want those big exits, you have to work fast and you have to grow. The growth is intense, but so many other businesses don't pick up on the learnings that they could from SaaS. And so I think re-examining how you do it and why, and then figuring out, is there a better way that we could run this process? Are there faster, more efficient ways, or that you can give your customers a better experience?
Yes.
Yeah.
And the last 4 years, I bet, has been moving at top speed and has been quite an exciting one. And I know there's been some opportunities presented to you in the last 4 years. I think you did some overseas travel, lived offshore. What are some of the things that working in a SaaS growth organization has brought to you personally within life?
Yeah, I think taking that interview, I'm very grateful for that shoulder tap and so glad I did it. I think it has certainly changed my life for the better. Not that running a coffee roastery would have been bad. I still think about it often. But I think, it's opened so many doors for me. We were lucky enough, we had the finance minister come and speak to us. And I remember asking him at the time, I was like, why, when I was in school, we used government websites, and I remember searching up different jobs like everyone did. It was like, what do they earn? We all wanted to know what was the highest paying jobs and things like that. And I remember looking at sales roles and how much they earned on the government websites at the time, and it was good. But now knowing what I know about SaaS, and even at that time I went and rechecked just to make sure the data was still the same, and it was wildly off the expectations that I think people could have had for themselves. And yes, that does often mean that a lot of it is like OTE, and you have to work for it. But you can earn more than what is on those websites, and there are roles that aren't on those websites that can create awesome career paths that nobody knows exists.
Yes.
And I was lucky enough, I got to go over to Canada as we opened up a new market. So went and was back on the tools selling and figuring out how can we crack the Canadian construction market with our product Site Pro. And man, that was an awesome experience. It was really hard. A lot of New Zealand SaaS companies try and go make North America work and fail. And so our mission was to go and put a foothold in that market. And, we've still got people there years later. And that's been, awesome to see it grow. And, now we're at that stage where we're trying to get it a little bit more predictable and keep that growth curve going high. And the reality is that's our growth market. So New Zealand's a small country. There's only so many construction businesses here, so the growth is offshore, which I think is an awesome opportunity for New Zealand as a whole. We should be celebrating our tech businesses, because back to that finance minister, that was the vision they saw New Zealand going in, but they weren't really, I guess, pushing it. Because I asked, why don't people know about this? Why wasn't that job told to me? Why didn't I know Rev Ops or SaaS existed?
Back in the school years, as a direction to be moving in.
Totally, and the careers advisors they wouldn't know about these things. And his response was, it's up to industry. So hopefully there's people that will listen to this, maybe share it with their kids, or maybe one of them stumbles upon it. But I think there's awesome opportunities out there, and I wish that they were highlighted a little bit more, but hopefully through social connection with different people and spreading what I do, hopefully more people can find out about that, because it's amazing. You can travel the world. I'm obviously back in New Zealand now, did about a year in Canada, and I've been back since, got to go out for conferences, meet some incredible people up in the States, in San Francisco and Washington DC, and some of the best operators in the world, whether that be the COO of ClickUp, having a one-on-one conversation with them. And so this is a guy doing hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue, and you're able to connect and genuinely ask and be inquisitive and curious.
Qualified questions.
Totally. And they just want to help. And that was through Pavilion, who create communities of SaaS, specifically executives, and that was an amazing event. But there's a lot of great people out there doing cool stuff, so it's been awesome to be able to connect and learn from others as well. Beautiful.
So New Zealand's really a very nice testing ground, because we have quite a wide demographic of organizations and business sizes, and we can, I guess, test our models and then move them offshore, which is, I guess, what's happening now in Canada.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we're lucky enough that we sell into Canada. We've got customers up there in the United States, and then all throughout APAC. So not just New Zealand, Australia, but some large global firms that use our products. So that's pretty cool to see that we're a company out of Auckland, and we're selling to the world, doing some pretty cool stuff. So that's exciting.
It is exciting. I sort of see it as you can start in a smallish organization, you can get all of the experience, you can then grow that organization, hopefully sell it, and potentially get tapped into the next big organization, which could be anywhere globally. Really, it's like a world trade.
Totally.
That you could be moving through.
And it's getting easier and easier to do that as well. Some of the tools and how AI is changing the space, you can build stuff pretty quickly and create awesome products and solve pretty complex problems, and then distribute that globally. Although not necessarily easy, but you can do it.
Yeah, great. I'm excited about Rev Ops. I think, I still feel it's early days, and, you're sort of on the edge of the frontier of where it's going, and it's moving obviously fast, and it's getting a lot of depth to it, but it feels like there's much bigger demand than there is professionals or budding new professionals to fill that demand. So to me, it feels like a career path and a channel which has long-term opportunity, where you're on the edge and you will move with the tech and keep that relevance for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it's, from my perspective, I think, the leadership of companies, identifying that this is something worth putting their money in. I was lucky enough, Ryan, our CRO, spotted that opportunity and was like, this is something you're really good at. There's a wider opportunity here, and kind of shoulder tapped me into it. but it's having that backing by leadership. So I think, if there are executives out there questioning whether it's worth it or not, it definitely is. And we've had great results, and Rev Ops is an amazing space and can have a really good impact if you give it the opportunity to.
Yeah, totally think so too. And I think Toby, that's a really good introduction today. You've done an awesome job of talking to us about your pathway and what Rev Ops is all about and the opportunities in the SaaS space. And I really enjoyed learning a bit more about SaaS and how the revenue models work and how Rev Ops plays its role in that. So thanks very much on that. And if there's something else you want to share with our audience before we say wrapped for today, is there anything else you'd like to talk about?
No, I think it's that just staying curious, being hungry, trying to learn. There's so much out there. I've learned a lot, had a great time doing it, met amazing people. So I think saying yes to opportunities, and always been looking out for what more can I do, what can I grow. I would just encourage people to do that. Yeah,
well, thanks for saying yes to joining the podcast today. It's really good, and the reason I like to do this and meet sort of diverse, interesting people is it just broadens my own awareness of things. So I'm definitely learning a lot, and hopefully we can do this again soon, and just sort of keep the finger on the pulse of your career and how Rev Ops is going, and keep the opportunities alive for the next gen coming through as well. I think that's really important.
Yeah. Cool. No, thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. And where will people find you, Toby?
Find me on LinkedIn, Toby Sharp, working for Comply Pro. I'm our head of revenue operations and business operations, so find me on there.
Yes.
Let's connect, send me a message.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. Thanks for joining Creative Expression, and hopefully we can have you back on again.
Cool. Cheers.
Yeah, cool, man. Cheers. Hope you enjoyed this podcast. Thanks for watching, and feel free to connect with me on my socials. If there's anything you'd like to ask at any time, you can also contact me on brendan.rolston@actionhq.co. Until next time, stay connected, be creative, and enjoy your day.